Welcome into Lions Central Radio. I am Nick Castoro, one half of your co-hosting tag team duo, along with Brandon Alisklu, who's alongside for the ride as always. Lions Jags was the game on Friday night. Brandon, I told you I went to the game. It was actually a mess downtown. Eminem and Rihanna were across the street at Comerica Park playing. And then you got the Lions and Jags going at it preseason at Ford Field. So total mess getting in and out of the stadium. I didn't get to do the live tweeting like I was hoping to do. As Risden mentioned before, I think was able to fire off one tweet to you that made it through the Ford Field Wi-Fi. So that went to no avail, but it was a pretty good game. Lions win this one 13-12. They're making a real habit out of these one-point preseason games. All three of them now come down to one-point affairs. Let's start here. Let me set you up with your biggest takeaways from what was really our best dress rehearsal for the regular season.
Well, to me, what stood out was that Stafford just did not look the same as he did the week before. I don't know. It scared me a little. I'm definitely very nervous about him going forward.
Yeah, the numbers for you guys. He was 10 of 16 for 98 yards and a pick, and the pick stands out. I saw that play really clearly. It was just he was looking for Calvin Johnson. It was obvious where he was going with the ball. He stared him down the whole way, and then he just missed him. He was behind him, didn't hit Calvin in stride, and just made a bad throw. So that one stood out. And he had others, 10 of 16, and those numbers aren't inspiring, especially in the what's supposed to be your best dress rehearsal for the regular season. And this week you have Calvin in the lineup, which is supposed to make things all the easier. And you're going against a Jags secondary that isn't scaring anybody. So yeah, a lot of negatives there. I wouldn't say I'm worried
Well,
to that.
I would go back. There's a lot more problems with this than meets the eye. There was the fact that he did come back, and he did do very well after starting. Well, not very well, but he did pretty well after starting. I think 1 for 5 with that pick, or something along those lines. And it was because the offensive coordinator started setting him up with some easy throws, kind of getting people moving around. The biggest problem to me is like that first throw. He was locked in on Calvin, and he threw it off his back foot. And he was lucky that didn't get picked. He looked
Yeah.
like an inexperienced Madden player out there. You know, I have AJ Green, I have Calvin Johnson, whoever it is you have. Oh, I'm just going to feed them the ball, and they're going to dominate. And never works in Madden. Doesn't work in real life either. His footwork was poor. There's a Golden Tate throw on the first drive that I don't know, and it hurt his accuracy because he wasn't setting up. And that pick, he just never saw Branch. It seems to me that Calvin Johnson, man, obviously he makes you a much better offense, but you have to use him properly. And this is, I think, why things have evolved since 2011, is that he can stunt a quarterback's progression a bit because you want to go to him. So you got to be okay with Calvin Johnson only getting one catch for 5 yards in a game if you're moving the ball.
And I hesitate to use the word lazy, but Matthew Stafford, he can get really reliant on Calvin, and his footwork, his mechanics, his accuracy, and just his decision making. I think does get worse with Calvin in the lineup because he always has this safety valve of if my first or second read isn't Calvin, if those guys aren't there, I can always fall back and just Calvin will make something happen no matter how many guys are around him. He does that, and it is an issue. I don't know how much stock I can put in it after just that one throw in this one game, and they're not going to get much work in week 4. So don't think you're going to get to look in the last week of the preseason and find these two remedying whatever happened in this game. I wasn't happy with it. Looking at the preseason as a whole, if I can here for Stafford for a second, we've seen him play week 2 and week 3 really quite a bit, and in week 1 we didn't see him too much. But if you were going to put a grade on what we've seen, we're not going to really see him in week 4. What do you think as a whole with Stafford with this preseason? Do you like what you've seen? Do you give him B and A? Where are we at with this guy?
Well, here's the problem. That was the dress rehearsal. That was the
Right.
main game. That's where you had everybody there. I'm going to give him a B minus, and I think that might be nice. I think that he just hasn't put it together as far as when all the pieces are there. He looked absolutely as great as he looked the week before. I thought he was that bad this week, and it's not just that one pass to Calvin. There was another one. He should have had at least 2, if not 3 interceptions, and he only threw the ball 16 times.
Yeah, 10 of 16. I do like that he's gotten a lot of receivers involved. We've seen a lot of guys catching balls. Ryan Broyles has had somewhat of a resurgence in this preseason. We've seen Eric Ebron get involved, Calvin, Golden Tate, and the like. And he's definitely spreading the ball around. I don't know if I'd go as low as a B minus just because I liked so much of what I saw in week 2. And I know this was the dress rehearsal, but I didn't see much variety to what they were doing offensively in this game. I didn't think that they were showcasing what I hope is what they're going to be doing a lot in the regular season. From a first-hand perspective, and obviously I didn't get as many great looks at it as on TV, but from the game, I didn't think it was as bad as as the numbers would indicate. It was a lot of short, intermediate passes. He wasn't really stretching the ball down the field. From what they were giving him and what he did, I go A minus for the preseason as a whole.
Ooh.
Based a lot on that game too, which I really did like. I know week 1 I don't even really include. It's week 2 and 3. This week obviously wasn't as good, but I'm confident with this offense going into the regular season.
His quarterback rating for this week was 56. 56, and it should have been way lower. Like I said, if those guys don't drop that pick or maybe the other one, you're looking at a terrible game. I mean, well, it already was a bad game with the 53 rating. And like I said, there were a lot of short throws. Now, you make a good point as far as this isn't the offensive scheme we're going to see, and things are going to be different, hopefully, once the regular season starts. But it makes me very nervous that he's all of a sudden going back to all the things that he used to do under Schwartz. And this is where we're going to find out what Jim Caldwell is. We're going to find out what Joe Lombardi and Jim Bob Cooter are as coaches, because he did slip into all those bad habits. Now, what they did during the game to kind of, basically neutralize his decision making was set up easy throws and easy plays and get things moving. Whereas what we need to see, and we might not see it this week, and there's no word yet if he's going to play, is I need to see these same footwork every time, consistency. And this is where we're going to find out if these coaches are worth the hype that they brought in.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, because when Stafford is consistent with his footwork and he has the proper mechanics, he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he gets lazy and he gets sloppy at times, and it's something it's tough to see, because we've seen the opposite when he is great and when he does what he's supposed to be doing, what a talent he is, and then just when it gets the sloppy footwork and the lazy mechanics and the bad reads, there's such a contrast between the good and the bad Matthew Stafford. So, yeah, we'll hope for consistency moving forward. We definitely didn't get as much consistency as we wanted through these preseason games, I agree. I think I like the coaching staff that is in place working with him, and I think it's going to work out in the regular season. I don't want to jump to too many conclusions off of this bad game, but you're right, it wasn't as good as it needed to be. One guy that I thought was as good as needed to be, based solely off of one magnificent run, was Reggie Bush. He can still go, folks. I think it was 86 yards. 86 yards was his opening touchdown run on the Lions' first drive. He only had 2 carries in this game, but for 95 yards, because his other one was. Yeah, it was the second drive, sorry. So he had another 9-yard run, and that was it for Reggie. But the 86-yarder showed all that I needed to see. I mean, I just clear number 1 back on this team to me, and it just shows what a difference maker he is and a dynamic guy. He just does things that other people can't do, and when he does find open space, this is what can happen.
Now, to me, it showed what a great change of pace back he is, because he can make those one plays. Now, I actually liked his first run quite a bit. It ended up in my notes. His first run, he put his head down, he moved the pile. That, to me, shows more. This was a great run, obviously, and it showed his explosiveness. And I think it was actually a design cutback. The more I watched that play, the more it seemed that, like I was talking about last week, there's a lot of zone blocking going on that I didn't know was going to be a part of this offense, so I really saw that on tape last week. The same thing, that for that play, the entire right side was blocking down pretty hard, so I think not only did he execute it well, and I'm not taking that away from him, I just think it was a nicely drawn-up play when I went back and looked, too. But, hey, if you can't catch the ball, I don't know what you're going to do there. You can't be on the field all the time, right?
Well, he wasn't targeted in this game, I don't believe, was he? I don't think they even tried to throw him the ball.
That couldn't be in the game plan.
Well, hey, Joique Bell was only targeted once as well, so maybe they just weren't looking to get the running backs involved in the passing game this week. Regardless, clearly it was what you were hoping to see out of Reggie Bush. When he did get the ball, he made things happen, even if they only handed it to him twice. So, I mean, you can't take negatives there. Joique Bell wasn't bad either. I mean, it's a solid back. It's a good to solid backfield. Definitely excited what we saw there. Joique Bell, 7 carries, 24 yards. Nothing great. He had one, I think it was like an 8-yard run that was just solid. I don't know what else to say about the running back position. Reggie Bush, that run was tremendous. Exactly.
As far as though it's as great as that run was, that's not always the case with him. As far as a clear number 1 back, you got to be able to stay on the field. He's only done that twice in his career.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Can Reggie Bush stay on the field for 16 games? It's a question mark you have to ask every year. Joique Bell is someone you think is going to consistently be there, and if and when Bush does go down, it's nice to know you have Joique Bell there. It's a great dynamic. It's a great 1-2. So you hope neither of them goes down, because the both of them are better when they have the other one alongside of them.
Yeah, I'm just cranky.
I
been
know.
off 3 planes today. I don't have it in me today to argue with you. Show you you're wrong. Just
Well,
whatever. Go on.
okay. Well, Brandon, let's make you feel a little bit better then. How George Johnson do for you in this game against the Jags?
Why he just continues every week to bring it. It's you kind of keep
Mhm.
thinking, okay, this is a nice little show you've put on. It's like Willie Young 2 years ago. He was good kind of last year all year, but Willie Young showed flashes a few years ago and never really panned out too much later. Granted, we are still in the preseason, so I shouldn't jump too
Right,
far
right, right,
ahead.
right.
But I mean, there were sacks, there were pressures, there was a special teams tackle, at least one in there. He even got you. Somehow, the only tweet you were able to get out of Ford Field had to do with George Johnson.
Yeah, it was a tremendous sack. I mean, I mentioned last week on the show I didn't notice him against Oakland, and you did, and he looked really good. I sure as heck noticed him in this one. It was a tremendous play, and that wasn't the only one. That's the one you're going to see on the highlights. But he's someone that's consistently getting in the backfield. When I did go back and watch the Oakland tape more, looking for George Johnson, I obviously noticed him, as you said. Wow, we're really. I don't like us getting along so much to start this podcast, but I agree with you on that. And he looked really good in this game. He's someone that is clearly defining a role in the defensive line rotation, and we don't know exactly what that rotation is going to look like yet. But I think we have to agree again that George Johnson is someone that's going to be. He's earning minutes once the regular season rolls around.
Yeah, he's definitely. I mean, this is a guy who when I was putting together a slideshow for Bleacher Report regarding guys who where are they going to get cut essentially, or at what point, or so I put them into categories like camp bodies, or guys they're just trying to get a look at, maybe throw in the practice squad later. I'm pretty sure I probably put him under camp body. There was nothing about him
Mm-hmm.
that excited you coming into this year, and he just continues to do it. So now it's not a question of him making the roster; it's where is he going to be, and I think he's clearly in that second spot of the rotation with Devin Taylor.
Yeah, and it's a rotation that's going to get a lot of just that rotation. You're not going to see just Ziggy Ansah and Jason Jones on the field for a large portion of the game. I mean, obviously you'll see them more than others, but Terrell Austin's going to be moving in pieces, and George Johnson's going to have plenty of opportunities to assert himself in the regular season, especially in the first few games. He's earned that throughout this preseason, so good for him. Devin Taylor as well, I think, has been really good in the preseason. I'm excited about that defensive end position. Uh, Ziggy Ansah and Jason Jones also coming off injuries. I mean, there's a lot of hope and optimism with the defensive end position, and hope and optimism isn't always the best thing with this defense, but I think these guys are earning it.
Well, I agree, and that was probably, since this is the takeaway section, that was my biggest takeaway of this game, is that front seven created havoc. There was just no time for well, there ended up being time, and that was because the Lions kind of stopped blitzing there at the end of the first half when Bortles came in and just shredded the secondary. And when they did blitz him, they got to him, but they couldn't even bring him down. Well, that's a different story. That's a quarterback right there. But the front seven was really, really good. I love the way that they were creating pressure. They brought a little more blitzes. They used some more press man on the outside to kind of buy them just that half second, and they got there. They had 6 sacks, I think. Perhaps the most impressive guy coming out of that game, though, Whitehead. He was everywhere. You couldn't watch a play and not see him. He had half those sacks. I think I've seen some sites credit him with 11 tackles, some credit him with 8. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, 11 tackles, 3 sacks. We were going to get into also the guys that didn't play: Kyle Van Noy, James Iadebo, Dejan Gomes. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Iadebo was for rest. Van Noy reportedly is with a hernia. It could be out 4 to 6 weeks. And you see Tahir Whitehead I mean, he shows up in a big way with these 11 tackles and 3 sacks, and he's all over the field. I don't know if it negates an injury to Van Noy. You never want to see the injury bug strike as it obviously has, but Tahir Whitehead was so good in this game, and I hadn't seen much out of Van Noy up to this point regardless. So this was a sight for sore eyes at the outside backer position.
Well, at this point, I don't know who would have been the starter going into the season. I understand that
Right.
we want to assume it was Van Noy, but he's been okay. There's been nothing that's really stood out about him. And Whitehead gets a chance to start in supposedly the biggest preseason game of the year, which really sounds weird. And he
Isn't
did
that fun?
excellent. Yeah, it's hard to argue with what he did. So he might have been the guy to start anyways. I don't know that this injury is that big a deal.
Well, that's just it. I wasn't excited about the battle to this point. I mean, going into the preseason, I was because I thought, and I still believe Van Noy's a great talent, but Tahir Whitehead hadn't done anything to assert himself or to earn a starting outside backer spot. So I thought Van Noy was just kind of going to kind of be anointed with the position, and he wasn't. He didn't have a great couple of preseason games, and Tahir Whitehead showed up in a way that I didn't know he was capable of. Again, just the preseason, but to see 11 tackles and 3 sacks in the dress rehearsal has to give you confidence in this guy and hope that he can kind of build momentum moving forward. I was very excited and I was very pleased with what we got out of Tahir Whitehead. Not because I didn't, well, actually, yeah, because I didn't know he had it in him. I haven't seen it throughout what little bit of a career he's had so far.
Yeah, exactly. He's just tackling so well. And actually, that's something the whole team has pretty much done better all across the board is tackle well, which if they can actually bring guys down when they have the ball, well, that'll be that should at least get them one more win over what they had last year, considering they had all those fourth quarter leads.
Uh, you gotta love
But
form. You gotta love form tackling, Brandon. It's a wonderful thing.
well, what isn't a wonderful thing that that keeps happening this preseason and has happened in the past under Jim Schwartz, penalty flags
Oh
and
boy.
turnovers. Are these now a real
Yeah.
concern?
You know, I marked it on the doc. I think the turnovers are a serious concern, and it's been the plague for this team. I don't know how many times we've had to bring this up on the show. Is turnovers? It needs to stop. They need to get better at it, and they're not. So I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but they're not getting better with turnovers. They continue to fumble the ball pretty consistently, and from a variety of sources. Stafford's interception, I don't know if I put too much stock into that, but the fumbles especially really get to me. The flags, we talked about it last week, are a problem throughout the league. This isn't just the Lions getting a ton of flags in the preseason. I think the NFL is really trying to make a statement and lock down the flags. So I don't put nearly as much stock into those as the turnovers, which are a serious problem.
Yeah, it does have me concerned because it was what 153 penalty yards, and I don't think the
Yeah.
Jaguars were close. So to me, that does raise a concern. I think it was like 15 to 8 penalty wise, so that's twice as many. That's something to
15 to 12.
50.
15
Oh,
to
it was
12. It was
12. Oh, that's right.
131.
I was thinking
Yeah.
23. Yeah.
130 yards to 100.
Well, regardless, I still don't. It's something that keeps happening with them, and I understand it's something we talked about last week. But considering this team has had disciplinary issues in the past, and you have Sue's thing, which we're going to get into later, and how he responded to that stupid penalty he had, and he turns around and gets an offsides penalty to where it just looked like it's, I don't know, like a child would react to something. Fine. Well, I'm just going to do this, and you make a situation worse, which is not something professionals should be doing. So that concerns me. The turnovers, I don't like what I saw from Stafford. I've already gone through that, and I think that can be fixed. That's why these guys are here, is to coach him and get him out of those habits. Um, but the guys that were fumbling the ball, I mean, George Wynn might have fumbled himself right off the roster. Mikel Ashore has always kind of been pretty much a fringe guy as it is. Reggie isn't fumbling the ball, at least so far, and neither is Troy Bell, at least so far. I'm okay with it. And Broyles, that wasn't a fumble by any stretch of the imagination. That was just a bad call. They eventually got overturned. So I think I'm okay with it.
You touched on where I want to go next, and that is Ryan Broyles, who didn't get much run until late in the game, but I thought he looked good when he did get in there. He ended up being our leading receiver, as it were, with only 44 yards on 3 catches. His longest was for 25. He was only targeted 3 times. He caught all 3 passes. He looked, I think, just overall in this preseason, Ryan Broyles has not just proven that he deserves to be on the depth chart. Everyone knew he deserved to be on the depth chart if he's healthy, but he's proving that he is healthy, and I think he could be a real contributor offensively this season.
Yeah, there's no doubt that I still don't understand why they waited so long to play him. Maybe they feel comfortable enough with him that they wanted to give other guys run. I would have rather seen him at least rotate in the first half. I wasn't sure about that call at all, but we'll see what they're trying to do here. But yeah, he just continues to catch every ball that is thrown his way, which is another problem that has reared its ugly head in the past. And he continuously moves the sticks. He's not always going to be the guy that's going to take something that's 3 yards and get you, 80 a la Golden Tate. He's not that explosive, at least right now, and he probably won't ever get to be that explosive again thanks to those 3 leg injuries. But he's just too reliable not to have out there.
Yeah, it's a set of hands that this team sorely needs in the slot and wherever else they can find space for him. I'd like to have seen in the preseason. He's definitely a lock to be on this roster, and we can only hope that his health holds up. You also touched on Ndamukong Suh and the hit on Chad Henne, just the latest in the Suh saga. ESPN's John Clayton said to expect between a $30,000 and $100,000 fine for Ndamukong Suh's hit on Chad Henne. I don't want to give away my position here. It seems a little excessive.
Like a meteorologist, isn't it? It's going to be between 30 and 75 degrees tomorrow. That's a heck of a range.
It's a wide range. Let's say it's at the top end, near the 100,000. I think that's just ridiculous. But let's start with the actual hit itself. Did this seem like it was definitely late and it deserved the flag, but was it dirty to you?
Well, he's a product of his reputation, and rightfully so at this point. He just looks so vicious when he does things. To be fair, I watched the tape in an airport. I wasn't sticking around to watch that play all that much. I mean, I was trying to zoom through it. So, as far as the actual hit itself, nothing really stood out to me. Even watching it live, I didn't even really notice too much, except, ooh, that's going to probably not go well. I don't know that it's definitely not worth $100,000, but considering it's him, a $30,000 fine. I mean, I guess. What else are you going to do?
Well, whatever the fine is, it's obviously not going to change the way Suh plays. We've learned that from all the others. He doesn't get the benefit of the doubt at this point, folks. He doesn't deserve it. He hasn't earned the benefit of the doubt. I get that you're going to fine him. I guess whatever the max fine they're allowed to give him is what they would want to go for, just because it's Ndamukong Suh and he has such a track record of this. Again, I didn't think the hit was beyond what a normal flag would be. It was a late hit, yes. Dirty, I think, is a stretch. It was just a late hit, but it's Ndamukong Suh, so that's what you get at this point. I don't want to spend too much time on that. That's what it is. If it's a $100,000 fine, though, wow. Brandon, let me just completely switch gears away from that now. When you're looking at the offense and the defense coming out of the dress rehearsal game for the regular season, I want to get into, what are you more confident in right now? Or do you like more what you've seen from the offense or from the defense, or if you want to phrase it a different way, which one has looked worse to you, the offense or the defense?
I know I'm in a sour mood, but blame the time difference. It feels late to me now. But just the most impressive unit, I'm going to say the one that I trust the most is the front seven of that defense. But the secondary is so shaky that I'm scared to go too far into that. And maybe Ayadibo's absence really kind of it lends, when he's out there, he really lends probably a confidence. He's a leadership role, and he understands that defense. So I think it can't be understated what he brings back there. So that could also be a part of why they were so terribly thrashed by Bortles back there. But the offense as a whole, there's too many weapons. You do have guys that can pop these 80-yard runs like Reggie. You still have Calvin Johnson. If Stafford can just kind of he doesn't have to be what he was in week 2. If he could just kind of even split the difference, that offense is going to score points. You have to feel more confident in the offense.
Yeah, I just a fun way to phrase this again, I want to throw it at you a different way. If it's the end of the ball game, and you either need the offense to start on the 20 and go down and score, or you need the defense to hold and get a 3 and out, which would you rather have?
Ooh. Well, let me put it this way. Does the other team have to hold as in we need to get the ball back and score, or do they – man, that's a really tough one because I was thinking they can stuff the run. This has always been a team that's been able to stuff the run well. So, if you got to get the ball back to the offense, they'll get that stop for you. Counting on that secondary, don't feel great about it. I think I'd have to go with the offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I'm more confident in one side right now, it's the offense. I think at worst this offense is going to be really good, and they have the potential to be one of the best in the league. I think the defense is, I think at best as a whole, because of the secondary and its deficiencies, especially at cornerback, I think at best you're hoping overall it's good to solid to very good. I don't think it can be a great defense in this league. There's just so much more talent elsewhere that they're not going to be one of the better ones in the entire NFL. But they can be good, and that's as much as we can hope for out of the unit as a whole. The front seven itself, though, can be great. I don't think either of us would question that.
Well, and if you have a great front seven, and especially if Terrell Austin
Right.
is going to do all these things, like some of the blitzes I've seen have been great. You know, you have corners coming in, almost coming in between the tackle and the defensive end, and it's just creating all kinds of problems for offensive lines. You could carry a meh secondary, for lack of a better term, a mediocre secondary, which is what this is right now. There are some pieces there. I haven't seen from Slay what I've wanted to see. As far as all the practice reports, he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't really done anything to warrant all the hype that was coming out about him, which, these things happen in July because we have nothing better to talk about. But I still think that this can be a very good defense, at least.
Yeah, and that cornerback position is a concern. It's Darius Slay, it's Rashean Mathis, it's Bill Bentley, it's Cassius Vaughn. It's a host of characters. They're just going to have to kind of piece that together as they go. I haven't seen enough to be even mildly confident in the cornerbacks throughout this preseason. That's definitely one of the biggest concerns with this team. Another battle I kind of wanted to touch on, though, Brandon, we've mentioned it a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. That's the right tackle battle. It's one of the most hotly contested, if you will, on this team. I don't know if hotly contested is the right word, but it's one of the closest, at least, battles that they have. Did you get an update or a swing one way or the other of the pendulum this week at the right tackle position?
Well, again, I found it odd the way they decided to split the reps. I understand that they've been doing this thing lately where one plays with the first team offense this week and then switch it the next week. But with that being such the dress rehearsal game, you would assume that at least, maybe first quarter, second quarter. But that's not the case. Hilliard played the whole first half, and I think Waddle played, or I know he at least started the second half. Um, Hilliard was the better player that day. So basically, we're right back to square one. Last week, I was saying quite the opposite and believed it. This week, it's Hilliard. So
Yeah.
hopefully, you can't go wrong either way, kind of thing. But at the same time, it's a little concerning. I'd like to see some consistency from somebody.
Well, I mean, I think if in this game, in the first half of your dress rehearsal, if Hilliard's the one that's out there with the first team getting the reps, I think they're saying he is the guy, not with the strongest hold on the position in the world. It's got to be the weakest starting spot on the team. But I think this was them saying that Hilliard, and he did do decent enough where I think they're giving him the first shot at the right tackle spot.
Yeah, and he, like I said, he did play pretty well. There wasn't a lot to pick apart about his game. Like I said, I didn't get to watch the tape like I usually do, but he didn't give up any sacks, any hurries, any hits. Um, and they were opening holes. He was one of the main guys that had a nice or a key block on that Reggie Bush run. They were running off the right side, so you have Larry Warford there. You need to run off Larry Warford. Another guy who actually had a nice block on that play was Kevin Ogletree. He was really getting down and dirty down the field, which, as we know going forward, we still don't know who that third receiver is either.
No, but we know there's still plenty of receivers on the depth chart. The Lions did make their cuts down to 75 this past week since the show wrapped. I think the last guy released before last week's show was Drayton Florence, and they've made a bunch of cuts since then to get down to 75. What I'm going to do, I'm going to run down all the cuts, and then we'll kind of give you the highlights or the names that we really took away from this list. Let me start on the 23rd of August. Let's go with the cuts in order here. Stephen Miller, the running back, is released. Wide receiver Connor Vernon released. Offensive tackle A.J. Dalton, offensive guard Alex Bullard, defensive end Chris Redding, defensive tackle Gregory Hickman. On the 25th, they released James Franklin, the quarterback, kicker Giorgio Tavecchio, punter Drew Butler, fullback Chad Abram, cornerback Jonte Green, cornerback Aaron Hester. And then on the 26th, they released Jacob Maxwell, tight end, and offensive guard Bryce Quigley. Let's go ahead and dive into the biggest names here, Brandon. I think the obvious one is Tavecchio was cut, so Freese has won the kicker battle.
Yeah, that rotation thing didn't really work out in Tavecchio's favor this week. not a whole lot of work for him, and then when he did get a chance, it obviously didn't go well. Well, at least he's going to be fine. He's got a real shot at that job in Oakland now.
Yeah. Oakland's already picked him up. So one man's trash, another man's treasure.
But why? What is even the point of Oakland using a roster spot on a kicker? They got Tubby Janikowski. He's going to be there forever because he doesn't need to be in shape. And the guy kicks it, I don't know, 70 yards.
I was gonna
I,
say it's not like you use him for kickoffs. Even Janikowski's got like the strongest leg in the league.
so I have no idea. It's the Raiders being the Raiders. They just refuse to not be the Raiders. It's just weird.
That's
Um,
Oakland.
yeah, especially once guys go down to 75. Like even Drew Butler coming in and punting. It's like, yeah, you're kind of wasting a roster spot, but whatever. You have 90 guys out there. You got to fill it in somehow. Um, Jonte Green jumps out at you just because of the ups and downs that the fans have had with him over the last 3 years. He kind of would have times where he looked excited, and he did have a pick in this game, but a little, too late. Other than that, nothing really jumps out at me.
No, we talked. I think we both said last week on the show, Jonte Green was pretty much dead in the water. It was coming. He just hasn't been good enough over the last couple of weeks. He did have the one pick, but just overall, he just hasn't been up to snuff. The other names on here really aren't gonna surprise or shock anyone. Uh, Quarterback James Franklin was the fourth guy, so they still have Orlovsky and Kellen Moore for Week 4, so both of them will get plenty of playing time. Whether or not Orlovsky has I know you still believe he has the second spot locked up. I think Moore is still in competition for it. Regardless, they'll both be there in the final week to battle for that spot or not battle, whatever it may be. All these other names are pretty much what you would have predicted to get down to 75.
Well, yeah, the biggest reason I don't think Moore it doesn't or isn't in a competition with him to get that second spot is because we haven't seen anything from the coaches to signify that they're giving him time against better competition. So I don't see how. I just don't think it's a battle. I think Orlovsky was their guy, was always going to be their guy. Moore did okay. He didn't do anything bad again, and he's had a solid preseason. If he ends up on the practice squad, I'm fine with that. Because I don't want them to carry three quarterbacks, especially with all the other positions they're going to need. But yeah, to me, Orlovsky's got this locked up, and that's not the best feeling in the world.
Well, if I could at least mention for a minute outside the realm of the Lions, former backup Sean Hill, now in St. Louis. For those of you that didn't know, he's going to get a chance to start now with Sam Bradford going down for the year in St. Louis. So it seems that Sean Hill definitely made the right decision for himself moving on from Detroit because now he's going to get a real chance to play. And I've heard a lot of national discussion about what are the Rams going to do with that quarterback spot. I think they've got a good guy to fill in Sean Hill for this season. I don't think people are realizing just how good of a stopgap he can be, and I think he could be a good quarterback for them all year.
Well, and maybe he can have. I'm blanking now. The guy he's now in Tampa Bay. He was Chicago's backup and did pretty well at
Josh McCown.
McCown. Kept wanting to say McNabb for some reason, because it's probably because they look so similar. But
Sure.
yeah, maybe he could have that kind of year. I don't know if you're also talking about a guy who hasn't thrown many meaningful passes in the last 2 years. So we're going off a lot of old stories, I guess, if you will. There were a couple new additions, though, and I figure since I am the linguistic expert around here when it comes to saying
enjoy
names,
this one.
Go ahead, and I'll be the guy to say. So they claimed two basically tight ends. One's going to they claimed him with the intention of turning him to a fullback. The first one is tight end Michael Egnew. So, if we're 1 for 1 so far. And then there's fullback Emil Igwenagu.
Sure. Yeah. Way to sound it out. They're playing these two guys. They're both tight ends. They want to make Igwenagu a fullback. I mean, are either of these guys even going to be on the roster after Week 4? I don't put much stock into either of these names.
No, it's a practice squad tryout.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Why not? But that might not be all that's coming in. I don't know if you saw Jason what's it, California? Right back to it.
Yeah.
Woo!
Jason Lockenfora.
Right back to it. He put out a tweet that the Lions were looking to make a trade for secondary help. In the same tweet, he also mentioned that the Browns were, I think, either shopping defensive linemen or looking for defensive linemen, but he wasn't trying to link the two teams. So at least the way I read it, and that's also the way Pride of Detroit.com saw it. It's interesting. I don't see anything wrong with maybe trading one of these deep defensive linemen that you're going to cut, or a Darryl Tapper. Somebody's obviously going to go. I don't know which one it's going to be. But maybe you could pick up some a fourth quarter or a fourth cornerback, or maybe even a nickel man.
Sure. I mean, the depth along the defensive line is obviously much deeper than it is, especially at the cornerback position. So I'm all for. I don't know. Obviously, we don't know what they're looking to give up, so it's hard to judge a potential trade. But cornerback help is a need on this team.
Yeah, well, hey, maybe they'll give up Kellen Moore.
Wow. Yeah, maybe.
I think there'd be a revolt.
One guy they won't be giving up is T.J. Jones, the receiver. He has to start the season on the PUP list, which means he's out at least 6 weeks. He's got nerve damage to his shoulder. I wasn't even sure he was going to be someone that makes the roster, so I hate to say blessing in disguise, but at least T.J. Jones is going to be sticking around for a while.
Yeah, he's. I don't know how. You kind of wonder how extensive this injury is. I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this so I don't get sued for slander.
Right.
You always wonder how creative teams are being with their injury reports. For instance, I think Tom Brady is constantly on every injury report that's ever come out since 1997 or something like that. But you wonder if they're just not trying to stash him, maybe put him on the IR and let him learn. I know I saw an article where he's itching to get back on the field, and I'm sure he is. He does have great hands. He did put up good numbers in his senior year at Notre Dame, but at this point he probably wouldn't have had a chance to make the roster.
Yeah, I think both of us are kind of taken away from this that it may be a placeholder move. I don't know about the severity of the injury, so we don't want to say anything in that regard. But it'll be good for him to still be on the roster for at least another 6 weeks and learn, and maybe there'll be a role for him when he does return injuries and whatnot. Who knows what will happen in the future?
Exactly.
So,
it also keeps other teams from getting a look at him and maybe being able to stash him on the practice squad later on.
It has a couple of benefits, although it is always tough when a guy goes down with an injury. Looking forward to Week 4 of the preseason as much as we can. There's not much to take away from Week 4 of the preseason. This is the weakest of the 4 preseason games because the starters are not going to play, if at all, maybe a series or two. But there's things you want to look for. There are battles going on for positions. There is stuff you can take away from Week 4 of the preseason. Brandon, what are you looking to take away from this game?
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Tahir Whitehead is going to kind of basically cement his status as the strong side linebacker come that first Monday night. I assume him and Ashley Palmer will get plenty of run. Whitehead's been the guy that stood out all preseason. He's a decent reserve player, and I think that's what's going to happen. I'm intrigued to see how this back of the rotation running back thing works out. You kind of have to wonder at this point if they're both going to keep fumbling the ball away. Maybe neither of them are here, and I'm talking about Wynn and LaShore.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see both of them off the depth chart. I think I said last week I didn't think Wynn was going to make it. I stand by that. I don't think LaShore does either. So I expect both of them to be gone, but maybe one of them does make a statement to make Detroit think about it in Week 4. I think the biggest thing, obviously, in the final preseason, in the last walkthrough, really is no injuries. You don't want to see anybody go down in this game or in any game, but keep your starters healthy. Hopefully they don't play too much. But on another front, I want to see Nick Fairley. I want to see more out of this guy. I want to see him work. I want to see him play. I want to see him have passion. I hope they give him a lot of reps and a lot of minutes. I think he needs them. I think they need to put him on the field and force him to work for it and try and earn a spot. So I know the starters aren't going to play much, but Nick Fairley's not a starter, so I'm hoping we see plenty of him in this contest.
Yeah, that is going to be really interesting to see what they do with him. Obviously, he could probably use it to get into football shape, since that's something he's not going to do on his own. And you're right, he's not a starter. You got to keep C.J. Mosley healthy because you assume he's going to be the guy that's producing this year. Fairley he only had 16 snaps last game, and he did okay. He had a couple plays actually where he had at least one hurry, and then he had another one where he just blew up the backfield and forced the running back right into the defense. It was a nice play. It was the kind of thing that he can do. Just if you don't do it consistently, we don't care.
No, that's exactly right. So, looking forward to next week's show. Just a little tease for you guys. Then Brandon will give you the social media, whatnot. It's going to be mainly a preview, looking forward to Week 1 of the preseason against the Giants. We're going to break down that Monday night game and what to expect and what we're looking for. We'll give you a little touch up on Week 4 of the preseason, but don't expect too much of a full recap on that show. It's time to look forward and get ready for regular season football.
Yeah, and we'll be able to dig into all the cuts and everything because the roster has to be set by this coming Saturday at, I believe, 4 p.m. Eastern or Central or whatever they use for their time zones. I'm all whacked out on time zones. So you can go ahead and tell me what time zone you're in. Yeah, how you like that
Oh, beautiful.
segue?
Please continue.
You can find us on Facebook, Lions Central Radio. Give us a like, interact with us, share the show, or you can share it because you like it. You can share it because you don't like it and want to torture other people. Do whatever you like. Just go ahead and give it a share. You can also find us on Twitter at Lions Central PFC. You can find me at Brandon Alisklu. That's ALISOGLU, and it's probably the best place to find me because I'm not even sure where I am right now. And you can find Nick Kostora at Nick Kostora, Kostora. And that's going to wrap up our show this week, folks. So signing off for Nick, I am Brandon Alisklu. Can't wait to see you next week.